Thanks guys for joining us. Like I said, we are live. We are here. We're going to be talking about the mortgage and eviction forbearances. There have been a couple changes, as I said in my video, of things that have happened and things that have not happened. So I'm just going to give you guys an update as to what's going on with that. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to ask. And then also, Gabby, our intern, is going to be posting some helpful links that can also get you some more information on this. So for those of you who do not know who I am Jen Green. I am part of Property House Partners. We're located here in the Twin Cities Metro in Minnesota. And we are a real estate investment company that is family owned, and we help folks out of situations more or less where they need to sell their homes quickly for cash or for terms. Some situations we specialize in foreclosures and in probates, but we help folks out in divorce, incarceration, too many repairs, looking to move, downsize, whatever kind of situation that you're in. If you're looking for help or just want an opinion, no obligation offer, that's something we're able to help you with as well. So I'm going to start by talking about foreclosures and what's going on with that. And you know, it kind of hits home for me too, because I think I've told you guys in the past, Dan and I went through a foreclosure in 2012, and you know, it's eerily similar to kind of what was happening back then. Now, obviously, again, it's for a different reason, and it's something that's definitely out of our control. It's not because of, you know, the banking institution, but this is something that we don't necessarily see an end in sight for. And I just did a training last week for a coach of mine, JT Fox, for 2 hours on short sales and foreclosures. Because I mean, again, this is not, I'm not trying to be, you know, fatalistic here, like I've said before, but I mean, it's not really looking super great for people who are in these situations. For instance, some of the things I've been reading about, and my friend Celie had posted, was about, you know, the FHA loans, and they've hit their highest delinquencies that they've ever seen. They're at about 20% in New Jersey for FHA delinquencies. Overall in the states, its average is about 16%. So FHA mortgage are those folks who either have low credit, or need to get into and would like to get into a home. So first-time home buyers, it lets you put down a smaller percentage, usually about 3%, for a down payment. And so those, like I said, in the second, and I'm just going to look down a little bit because I do have some notes. I want to make sure that I get all this information for you guys right, so I apologize for that. But the late FHA loans, like I said, rose nearly about 16% in the second quarter. From about 9.7% in the previous 3 months, which again, like I said, is the highest level that they've seen back since 1979. And the delinquency rate right now for conventional loans, by comparison, is about 6.7%. So typically those people that are the most vulnerable populations, you know, obviously lower income families, those are the folks that are going to be suffering the most from this right now. And these are people now, just to keep this clear, these are people who are outside of the moratoriums, or excuse me, sorry, people who have not filed for forbearance. So people who did not file, these are now folks who are late because they're not being put in forbearance. Like I said before, New Jersey is at 20% for that delinquency rate. And also, the state also had the biggest increase in the overall late payment rate, which jumped to 11% in the second quarter from 4.7% in the first quarter. And then following behind that, here's what's super interesting to keep an eye on, is the other states that are kind of in the same boat as them is Nevada, Florida, New York, and Hawaii. And if you take a look at those 5 states, those 5 states are heavily reliant on tourism, right? And leisure. And those leisure and hospitality jobs have been hit, obviously, the hardest by this pandemic, since restaurants, events, those types of things are closing. And now we're seeing, you know, the results of that 6 months later, or so, 5 to 6 months later, of folks now that have not been able to keep up with their payments and didn't participate in the forbearance program. So do know that, obviously, that, as I've said before, most mortgages are protected from foreclosure by the federal forbearance. But the thing is that you have to remember that you have to be participating in the forbearance program. You can't just stop making your payments and then expect, for a forbearance to be put into place. You have to contact your lender and put the forbearance plan in place, which in some cases can limit you paying or can stop you paying for up to a year, all right, without any penalties. Now, as of August 9th, about 3.6 million homeowners were in forbearance, which is about 7.2% of loans, all right? So that's a huge number, but then there's still people outside of that are still struggling to make their payments, like I said, who are not part of the forbearance program. So please do keep that in mind. And something for folks to watch, like I said previously, is watch those hospitality states, right, that really kind of their economy is based upon that, and the workers are really, that's kind of the job market that they are in, is those hospitality and leisure states are going to feel the effects of this first, because this is who the pandemic hit first, and then it'll kind of trickle down from there. All right, so just obviously because I'm from Minnesota, I do have a little bit more information on that, so I'm just going to touch on that a little bit. We know that the FHA extended the foreclosure suspension through August 31st, for FHA, VA, USDA, and Fannie and Freddie Mac loans. Now, remember that if your servicer or your mortgage is part of, or is one of these, that your servicer then cannot start a foreclosure. They'll have to hold the foreclosure sale, and they can't evict anyone also until after a foreclosure or until after August 31st. Now, there are some caveats in there, which I'm going to explain when it comes to like the eviction part of that. But do remember, right, that the CARES Act does not apply to private bank mortgages, all right? So if you are outside of those federally backed mortgages, you're going to have to contact your servicer or the foreclosing agent right away, because they may have some special programs that are still set in place for people who can't pay their mortgage. And their contact information is either going to be on, your mortgage bill that you receive, or on the notice of foreclosure if you did receive one. So please still be proactive about it. Just because it was filed doesn't necessarily mean it has to go through. If there is some help available, contact them. Those are the only people that are going to be able to help you at this point when it comes to the foreclosure when it comes to the foreclosure. All right. So Gabby, this would be a good time for you to post the link that's specific to Minnesota and national for our for the foreclosure piece of it. So I'm going to move on to evictions. All right. So with evictions now, this has been super interesting. There's about 21% right now of all adult renters that were behind on their rent in July, which is a really, really big number. So a fifth of the nation is behind on their payments. That's what the most recent data is showing. Now, that was also before the eviction moratorium was lifted, which was on the federal eviction moratorium, which was July 24th. And then the enhanced employment benefits, so that $600 a week, ended July 31st. So now these are the numbers, like I said, before those. So we'll have to see what August shows up for that. I don't obviously have those numbers because August isn't finished yet. But do know that there are over, 21% of people that are behind on their payments. So it's really a big deal, right? Now, Trump did sign an executive order on August 8th. And from what I can see, there's been some misconstrued information about what it means. Again, I am not the expert in this, but just from some of the research that I've done, that I've seen, it wasn't necessarily extending the eviction moratorium. It's more or less setting up a study to see if an investigation is what they're calling it, whether they could appropriate money for helping out renters and for rental assistance. Now, it did fall short, though, from what I'm seeing, of reinstating the federal eviction ban that prohibited the evictions of about 12 million people or so that were in government-backed properties. Now, again, like I said, that expired July 24th. So what they're saying right now, the order that's being set in place for people to see if they, are going to keep the federal eviction moratorium either going or be able to provide some financial help, is that they're going to investigate right now whether it's necessary to stop evictions as a way to help the coronavirus from spreading. And then also presumably from people crossing state lines to look for new housing if they do end up getting evicted and have to move. Also looking for people if they have to move out, if they have to go into shelters, and looking to see what that is going to be, obviously being in closer quarters. And if there's even going to be shelter available, because if these evictions continue, the housing, the shelters will be packed, and then there won't be anywhere else for people to go to. So that's one piece. Now, the second piece is that they're going to identify ways to get renters and landlords financial assistance. Again, that still hasn't been put into place. They're investigating it and identifying what it is. And then also providing quote unquote assistance to various organizations or individuals to help guard against evictions and foreclosures. So more or less giving money to some state aid programs, legal aid, those types of places that are able to give folks money. Now, it's not clear though, I guess I was wrong. It's not clear though if that includes financial help. So do keep that in mind as well when you're thinking about this. And then the last piece is that they're going to review existing quote unquote authorities and resources, which could include government programs. All right. So all of this stuff is still in the mix, but obviously we see there's a lot of big stalls in Congress for things being passed. And so this is something that we're not necessarily going to be able to depend on at this point. Folks, that are in this situation. So it's really going to be up to you to be proactive about your situation and make sure that you stay on top of things to know exactly what's going to be happening in your state. Right now, what we're seeing, this is according to Urban Institute, it's going to cost somewhere between $81 billion and $162 billion to help renters and mortgage holders who need assistance during the crisis for 6 months. So those are preliminary numbers, just so you guys have that out there. That's a really big chunk of change. However, again, no one knows what's really going to happen right now, if it will be financial help or some other type of assistance, whether it's finding a new place to live or whatever kind of assistance can help out in your state. So if you live in a property, though, that is covered by the CARES Act, all right, please listen closely to this. If you live in a property that was covered by the CARES Act, so a federally backed loan, so, like the ones I said before, FHA, VA, USDA, Fannie and Freddie, they can now legally ask you to leave the property and start charging late rent fees as of July 24th, all right? Now, the soonest they can legally file for an eviction and force you to leave is August 24th. There is a 30-day grace period in order for them to file the eviction to actually ask you to leave. Now, again, that's only 1/3 of these properties that are covered by Fannie and Freddie. The thing to remember that's kind of tricky here, though, is that if your landlord actually owns the property 100%, so there is no mortgage on the property, or if they have a private mortgage, or if they receive Section 8 money, the CARES Act does not apply to their situation, right? So if you're in one of these spots, right, think about that, please, and know that what your rights are and what they aren't, because there are people that are still filing evictions as we speak. So, Katie, if you could also post now the state bans that are set in place, and the other two resources that I had available, that can be on there. There's one that's going to be specific for Minnesota and what's happening, and then also there's another website that provides national information for what's happening. Because the other piece of it too is that, not only was the federal ban lifted, but some states are actually still putting peacetime emergencies in place, which more or less then is saying, okay, these, the federal government may have lifted the ban, but our state is not going to. So for example, a lot of renters are still staying shielded from the evictions, the state local moratorium. So like I said, Florida and Virginia are doing it right now. Same thing with New York. Florida and Virginia are postponed through September. Like I said, Minnesota is postponed through September 11th, and then New York, it doesn't expire until October. So make sure to check it out on the website that's posted on there, that Katie posted on there. And also that can tell you, like I said, exactly where your state is. Obviously, even if the federal moratorium is gone, your state may be enacting peacetime emergencies for you too. So now I want you to think about also too, if you, this is kind of where evictions and foreclosures cross, is that, and this is just in Minnesota, it's Minnesota specific, so do keep that in mind, is that if a foreclosure sale happened during the emergency, all right, or if a redemption period expired during the emergency, you cannot be evicted from your home until the emergency is over on September 11th. So as long as that peacetime emergency for at least in Minnesota is set in place, you cannot be kicked out of your home, whether it's an eviction or a foreclosure, right? And you're issued the foreclosure, or if your redemption period expires, and again, this is specifically Minnesota, you cannot be evicted from your home. Again, I'm not going to assume what the rest of the nation is doing with that, but I would think that if these peacetime emergencies are set in place by these states, that the eviction bans and foreclosure bans are going to be set in place and put on hold. An example of a state right now where things have not been extended is in Idaho. It's been 3 weeks, obviously, since the federal eviction moratorium expired, and they're already seeing a huge jump in eviction hearings. This past week, Ohio actually had 53 eviction hearings scheduled to be heard, which on average, that number is usually between 30 to 40 hearings a week. And so some states and cities, like I said, have set up some local rental assistance programs to help tenants cover their missed payments. In Austin, Texas, for example, they distributed $1.2 million in emergency rental relief in May, which helped about 1,600 people of the 11,000 who applied. Now think about that. You have 11,000 people who applied and 1,600 people received assistance. So again, there's a huge need for assistance. There's not necessarily money set up right there, kind of with the gridlock of what's happening right now in Congress. I just want folks to be aware of what your rights are, what's happening in your states, and obviously as things progress and we don't necessarily see an end in sight right now, there is a possibility for you to be evicted. There is a possibility for you to be foreclosed on if you haven't taken advantage of some of these programs. And so the reason that I brought up the training that I did last week is because one of the things, like I said, that we specialize in is helping people out of foreclosure, and whether it's doing a short sale for them or selling their home, depending on how much equity is there. This is something that I need you guys to all think about, because this isn't a time to bury your head in the sand. This is a time for you to set a plan in place. We've been given this extra time that we have right now. Now is the time to create a plan. If you need help from us to create a plan, I am happy to do that. A lot of the times I'm able to come up with 3 or 4 different scenarios. A lot of the times we use short sale as a safety net for people. If they have other things set in place and they're not able to do them, short sale is a benefit to you, because that's what ended up happening to Dan and myself. As we had our foreclosure, it ended in short sale, and thank goodness that it did. I think probably in a future live that I'm going to do, I'm going to be talking about the benefits, if it ends up being that way for you, of short sale versus a foreclosure, and what that looks like on your record, hiring, credit, all that kind of stuff, so people can get a clear explanation and really understand the benefit of short sale if it does come to that for you. I just wanted to push this information out there because, like I said, a lot of stuff has happened in the last month or so that I gave an update on this, because I think it's really important for you to use some of these resources that Katie just posted about what your state is doing in regards to the forbearance for foreclosures, and then also the moratorium when it comes to evictions. And so please keep in mind that if you are in your house, and like I said, and all of those things have happened, that you cannot be formally evicted if you are covered under those the mortgage programs through the CARES Act. If it's outside of that, please know that they can file for foreclosure and can file an eviction. Again, they'll check with your local state authorities to see where things are at. I hope today was helpful for everybody. Like I said, I'm probably going to do a future live where I'm going to be talking about, like I said, the benefits of the benefits of short sale over foreclosure and some different things outside of that, because as this continues, we're starting to see some of the cracks happen in real estate. Now, again, do keep in mind the housing market has been doing well. I mean, things have been selling quickly just because inventory is way down. And I'm not, again, trying to forecast anything because nobody necessarily knows, but just from what I'm seeing based upon who this pandemic is hitting hard, the most right now, like I said, in terms of states and foreclosures and evictions, are those people that are in leisure states that also, depend mostly on, depend on travel and people going there for, business, pleasure, whatever it is. And so do keep an eye on those things too. So thanks to you guys for that. If you ever have questions, you can always contact us. hello@propertyhouseinvestments.com. You can always email us that way. You can send me a personal message if you want to. Again, like I said, we typically work in Minnesota, but it doesn't mean that I don't have connections all over the nation, because I do. A lot of the times I'm sometimes also involved in some of those pieces, just because, like I said, if people are calling me for help, I'm going to give you somebody that I rely on, that I trust in a different state to be able to help you out if that's the case. Also, if you have questions about selling your house, and it's not necessarily about one of these things, but you're like, hey, I have a vacant house, or, anything like that right now where you're looking to get some help, you can always contact us. Go to our website. We also have a lot of resources available there, propertyhousepartners.com. Always remember that house is spelled H-A-U-S. And then also on our YouTube, we're going to be having, and I will tell you, I've been very bad about posting short answer questions. I am going to get better at that. Just because I have been receiving some questions. Sometimes it's hard to thumb through these lives and to find the questions, to find the answers to the questions that you may have. So please feel free to post there. Subscribe to our channel, Property House Partners Q&A. We'll be able to get you answers to your questions there. We're always able to help. And if you're local, call us. The number is 612-234-2476. That's our general line. You can call us for questions about that. And next week, is our business, entrepreneurship, and real estate investing week, what we focus on. I am really going to focus on the importance of mentorship and coaches. I have found over the last year or so, and especially the last 6 months during this pandemic, how important it is to have a coach and to have a mentor. Because I'll be honest, it's been hard, going through this pandemic, not only owning your own business, but children and balancing your time, and all of those things have been really important. So that's what I'm going to be talking about next week. Always on Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Central Daylight Time right now. And yeah, we'll be on next week. I'm super excited to see you guys. Again, if anything comes up, let me know. If you have questions about anything, please contact us. We're here to help in any way that we can. Again, this is Jen Green with Property House Partners. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much. Have a good week.